We are live, by the way. We are still 3 minutes
Okay.
away from 4 o'clock, but I've notified everyone. We'll just begin in 2 minutes. Akshay is here, Anul is on his way, and Vedant
Okay.
is here already.
Okay.
If you guys want to follow along, I have linked the GitHub repo in the Telegram message. Vedant, are you having coffee?
That was me.
Not.
Oh, okay, Akshay, okay.
So I'm like, let's enjoy this over a cup of coffee.
सबको पता है अभी तो कितना शक्कर डालता है.
No, it was a premix, so it has to be spun and made.
Now everyone knows you need 3 spoons of sugar in your coffee. We all heard it.
But yeah, that's still a myth. There was no added sugar in it.
We
Whatever was in the premix sachet was there, but still sweet, yes.
All right, I think we can start. Anul will join
Yeah.
hopefully soon. Let's not keep everyone waiting. So we already have like half a dozen people watching. Anul is here. Speaking of the devil. Hey Anul.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good.
Right. So Open Authenticator is the name of the project, and I was looking at it, and Vedant's already done a pretty good job with documenting the project. So our jobs are more difficult this time. So this is the hard. So there's the website, which is nice. Looks like it's auto-generated from Markdown files or something, which is always good. And there are some sponsorship links. There's the bill of materials, which opens up to a Google Sheet. and these are the open source repos that are related to this. So this is already pretty well done. Yeah, okay. So just for everyone's sake, this is a TOTP based hardware authenticator. What it means is that it uses a key and the current time, the accurate current time, to give you another key that you can use to log into websites. Uh, Vedan, correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Yeah, it was right.
Yeah, yeah. So, and this is a standard. Like Vedant's not creating a new standard, which is always something that you should be careful about when you're doing something related to security. Building on top of standards is great. Inventing your own standards is not great when it comes to security. So one small quirk with that, I always find it a little hard to read bullet points which have the same structure. So uses this, uses this, uses this, uses this, uses this. This screams for a table instead of a bullet
Uh-huh.
point. Just a minor quirk. But if you
Okay.
could just do a table here, it would be simpler, I think.
Yeah,
But yeah,
noted down.
yeah, because sometimes when you have the same sentence structure for a lot of bullet
Mm-hmm.
points, it looks cleaner to have it in a table.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at the hardware design first. Akshay and Anul, you can jump in whenever you want,
I
but
have a
I'll
couple of points. So if you can show us the render, the
sure.
photos, that should be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I checked out yeah. Okay, this one. Okay, this one works. Yeah. This was good. So a couple of points. In fact, I had designed something kind of similar several years ago for a customer. That was a clone of the Trezor Bitcoin locker, a wallet, rather hardware wallet. So kind of similar, but that used an STM32. So this reminded me of that project. So one suggestion is, for this flat cable for the LCD, for the OLED, that's coming from
Actually,
the back side
it's
to the
not.
front, that part. Yeah.
Uh,
So
Anul is
this
not audible,
one,
I think.
okay, how about now?
It's, there, it's a lot of reverb on his voice.
Is that mine or is there someone else's mic that's on?
I'm mute.
Okay.
I'm mute.
How about now?
A bit better, yeah.
Okay. But is it better now?
Yeah, it is
yeah.
better now.
Okay. So for the flat cable, I usually like to have a slot in the PCB, so the cable goes through that. If not, at least a notch at the top edge. Essentially, you don't want the flat cable coming out of the outline of the PCB, like jutting out of there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that'll be a really handy thing to do. The other thing, and of course, I have no engineering backup to to say that, but for the ESP32 also under the antenna, I like to have a notch in the PCB itself. I mean, there's no real valid reason. I can't really substantiate it with some good backup on that, but it's just practice that I've developed. These are the two things. And finally, for the buttons, I'm not sure what exactly is there on the in terms of their nomenclature, but if it's 4 buttons with a display, I've kind of become used to having left, right, up, down in a triangle or a diamond shape. So
Okay.
that way it becomes easier to know which button is to go back and which button to go forward, which one to go up, which one to go down. With buttons in a line, it's slightly a difficult thing. You have to always look at the buttons to see which one you want to press. So that's more of the user interface aspect. And finally, what I would have done was the buttons and
Design.
the
I'm thinking of a slider one. It is a single switch. You can do left, right, and click in the center also.
ah, yeah, okay, that works as well. The joystick kind of thing.
Uh,
Yeah, that'll be nice. And
it's like
finally,
60
one,
bucks.
yeah, that's okay. And the other thing I would do is put the OLED and the buttons on the backside of the PCB and everything else on the front. This might make it easier to mount it on an enclosure where you have these two things open on the outside world. So you have windows for the buttons and the display, and the rest of the stuff can go under the on the backside essentially. Maybe even the switch could be on the front actually. So the switch, display, and buttons.
So just to come back to one of the point that Anul mentioned, so what
Yeah.
you normally call the area below an PCB antenna, it's called a
Mhm.
keep out zone. And for example,
Yeah.
Espressive has a hardware design guidelines PDF, which is about generally how to design around ESP32. So if you look at that, it will have it will basically
So
have a
yeah, I noticed the. I mean, with the design
But
it does have the keep out over there, so there's no copper
I
luckily.
have made a keep out there actually. There's no
Yeah.
copper under it.
Yeah, I
okay.
noticed
So
that. That was
can you?
quite apparent. Yeah.
So if you share my screen, I'll be able to project what it's trying to say. So they have given a nice how where the ESP should be placed with respect to the PCB so that you are not troubling the Wi-Fi signal.
Nice.
Because if the antenna is positioned in a way and it's supposed to be propagating in, let's say, a given direction, and you have all the
Mm-hmm.
components just right next to it, you're going to add a lot of attenuation to your own antenna design. So
Makes
this
sense.
particular position, these are the recommended positions which I mean Expressive gives in their hardware design guide. And on the next page, it also gives what's the kind of keep out or a cutout. What they suggest will help you not interfere with the antenna design. So with one of the tough calls over here is if you just look at the main image. Just a moment here. So if I bring this side by side to the hardware design guide, we may want to uh, relook at this how the position of ESP is and how much are we really troubling it, because right next to it we have a power circuitry with inductance and we are doing a boost circuitry right there. So it's power right next to antenna and switching happening at the same time. So a lot of multiple dimensions coming together. So some amount of rethought might be needed here.
So
That's a great
actually, in
insight.
the earlier design, what I had done is the regulator was on the right side, but then some guys said that it should be in a central position, or else there will be a lot of power loss using where it travels to the traces. So that's why I moved to the center. But yeah, this is also a point that I
Yeah,
need to consider.
what kind of consumptions are you looking at? Because these power loss might be a very negligible value, I think.
Yeah.
Like, is it?
ESP takes the maximum thing. All other things are very low power, like display
Yeah,
and the RTC.
yeah, I think it might be a couple of milliamp.
But then
Yeah.
the boost converter which you have on board is rated at 1.8 amps, which is it's a good rating to have,
Uh-huh.
and you are switching at pretty decent frequencies. Can you point me at what the frequency of this?
I think in the data sheet it must be given. I
Yeah,
don't remember.
I'm projecting the data.
Various kilohertz.
Yeah.
I'm guessing
I
It
mean,
3 to
was
500
something.
kilohertz.
Can you search for megahertz? Then maybe it will come.
we're switching it kilohertz oscillator frequency for this.
Okay.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
still it's not that bad a frequency to be at, but still
Okay.
you will have to look at the losses. I mean, due to this frequency coming into play. But yeah, I mean it's not a high frequency, that high a frequency to be worried about. But still, sure, it's some amount of switching happening right next to your antenna.
Also,
Right.
have you used the 2-layer or a 4-layer board, Vedan?
I have used 2-layer. So that is why I
Okay.
didn't make a LED OLED cutout, because then I was like there was no space left to route if I made a cutout.
Okay. I think even putting a small notch on the edge should be enough.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be really big, actually.
I mean, if you're falling short of space, you could take a look at those buttons, I think, because they're pretty beefy buttons.
Yeah.
I'm
6
sure you
mm
can
by
find,
6 mm.
yeah, I'm sure you can find smaller ones, if indeed like space is a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, with respect to the feature-wise, I mean, you have pretty much covered all the bases. There are some nice little tiny things which I really liked. I'll bring them on. When I was looking at the image, when you made these tiny arrows and trying to point people to these tiny things really help while debugging for sure. It's a nice touch. It's a very cute touch which will help the user for sure. I know the image may not be the best, but I like these tiny touches from you that you're trying to give as much debuggable information to the user as possible. So these are
Yeah.
very important points that you have really covered well. So usability, reusability, serviceability, these are the factors which are really done well here. In general, it's a very neat looking, clean board which is easy to use.
So
Yeah.
one small suggestion, since we're talking about the cell screen, is that I always like to add a URL, especially if it's an open source project, because finding the repo and everything becomes easy.
Yeah.
So Open Authenticator is not exactly a very proper noun. Like it might be hard
Yeah.
to find your repo if someone
I
just
could-
finds the board. Yeah.
Could
So
add
if you
that
can add
GitHub
that
site.
yeah, that would be nice.
That plus a version for which version of the board it is.
Oh yeah, version number would also make a lot more
The
sense.
name and a version is good.
Yeah. Must be 4 or 5 fifth version.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it should match with the files available on your repo online.
Yeah. Right.
So one thing that small Git thing, I'll just take control of the screen for a
Sure.
second, Akshay.
Yeah.
Is that Git does this for you, sir? Like Git does this for you, where you don't have to version it separately. So if you just name it as schematics, it'll be fine. And then what you do is you version this at the top level so that the releases part shows you the actual versions. Instead of doing the versions yourself, you let Git do those versions. And then it becomes easy.
Sure.
Sorry?
How does that work?
You basically can go at any point and create a release and say, okay, I can't do this because I don't have access to this particular repo. But you can tag specific points. You can say that, okay, this commit is a new release. And then it will, because then
all the files get tagged with that release.
Exactly. And you can just directly download them from releases. You don't have to go to Git. You can go back like 10 releases and download the files that there were at that point from the releases tab. So that just becomes easier because then it'll give you like an exact snapshot of that particular point.
Is there a CLI command for that?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
So Git can let you do that. Plus GitHub has its own CLI, which you can use to do these kind of things automatically. And of course, you can do it in the browser. And the desktop they have that desktop app as well. You can most likely do it through that.
I've never used that. Anyone else using the Git desktop app?
Yeah, I have a couple of colleagues who absolutely hate the CLI because they are Windows fanboys and they don't enjoy the experience there. But yeah, I think it's so that's why I've had to use that a couple of times. But it's not bad. I think it's pretty decent.
Okay.
Okay, actually, I'm handing the screen back to you now.
One more thing I'm a little bit obsessive about is rounded corners on PCBs with sharp edges. I don't know. It's just something that I love to do for some reason.
Yes, I mean that's a beautiful touch as well. It's gonna make it easy when it's going to be in somebody's hands. It's not going to be poking around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. But then
handling
there
the
are trade-offs. When you're going to take it to manufacturing, you have to have it tab routed and the edges. You need spacing between both the PCBs when you're going to try and panel it through. So those
Yeah.
are some cases you have to be worried about. I'm not worried, but yeah, that's a change which comes in. Or
Yeah.
else in this you can have a flat panel. You just break it off normally. I mean, yeah. But then if it's going in a user's hand, it should be very nicely flat and nicely placed.
Also, which
Yeah,
brings me to another, problem that we all usually have. How do we determine the size of the PCB? I mean, it would be nice if we have standardized dimensions that we can, start using. Like, in papers, you have A sizes, I guess, A0 to A8 and so on. Right? So, uh, maybe some standardization on, well, you can't, maybe it won't be that easy, but at least if you can have them fit a certain box size, then that makes the job of making 3D printed enclosures a little bit redundant. You can just buy off the shelf, a nice enclosure and just put it in that. But easier said than done, I think.
the case is done, but I don't have it on Git yet. I'm just testing it out. But I can show you images of the case, 3D case.
Yeah,
It
I've seen
sits
that.
well.
I mean, that's a nice 3D printed case. But I was wondering just generally, it would be nice if we can just buy off the shelf cases and use them for electronics. I mean, I know there are many
Uh-huh.
sizes, but nothing really for
Yeah,
the tiny sizes or small sizes that we are looking at, like these kind of ones, like,
uh-huh.
little watches
Yeah.
or this kind of a handheld device.
There are
There's
those
nothing.
project boxes of PLA.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of those.
Uh-huh.
But maybe there's an opportunity for someone who can, have just like you have the, IP enclosures for, let's say, junction boxes, for example. There's a huge standardized range of size in that. There's a certain width, height, and depth in which you can buy them, and you need to fit in either one or the other of them. Nobody reinvents that size again, or does some off-standard size in that. So something of that sort is what I was just kind of thinking loudly about. Which is all moot if we can't buy semiconductors. What's the situation on that?
sorry.
Which is all moot, I said, if we can't buy semiconductors.
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
the what's the latest on that, man? When are we
I
getting
don't.
a chip?
I've heard people say years, like people talk in timelines of years, because now what's happened is like we are in the toilet paper phase of it, where people are just hoarding it, like buying more than they actually need because they don't
You
see
know
this
what?
coming back.
I heard that a lot, but I don't really agree on. I mean, I don't think it makes sense to me because for those, I mean, let's say who would have hoarded it? People like I mean, let's say people like automobile manufacturer, right? They would have hoarded tons of these, but now they are the first ones being hit with the shortage. They don't have anything to build on them. So if they are the ones who hoarded it, then who the hell has them hoarded and where are these gone?
I think that's happening not just with the auto guys. Of course, they have their own world
Supply
and
chain,
own standard,
yeah,
but I think that's happening with a lot of other people as well.
yeah, white
Like,
goods as well, right?
yeah, like people are buying whatever they see. Doesn't matter if they have or satisfied the requirements for the next 6 months or 8 months. They're just buying it
Mhm.
anyways because otherwise it's like sales come to a full stop.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's actually unfortunately happening. I don't see that happening with ESP32. So it's
Good. Don't jinx it.
yeah,
But
which is nice.
still, WROM is to $5 or $4 a piece.
Yeah, that definitely the prices have gone up for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
So there is a couple of questions. We can take a look at that and then resume looking at this. So Deepak's asked, render looks awesome. Which software did you use for this? So I think this is KiCad, right?
All in KiCad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is Kai.
This is KiCad. There's another suggestion. How about a QR code of the link on the backside of the PCB? That makes sense as well. QR codes, everyone knows what to do when they see a QR code. So if we can make that work, that works as well.
Yeah, big QR code will make sense.
Yeah. I think you have some space on the backside of the PCB for that, right? So QR code might make sense. Okay. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, overall, nice design. I mean, I like the way that, especially the fact that the part where it did the soldering at home, that was pretty neat. Using the induction and sand and all that.
Yeah, it gives
That's a
pretty good results.
good learning experience and good results too, both ways. So
Yeah.
nicely done on that for sure. Has Hackaday already written about this, Vedant, or not yet?
Sorry?
Has Hackaday already written about it or not yet?
No, it doesn't. Hackster did.
Have you submitted a tip?
No, I didn't yet. I was waiting for my 3D case to get finished. Then I would submit it.
Yeah, makes sense. Just hold on a bit. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I also have a working video. I'm posting it in the private chat.
Nice.
You can. Okay, I'll try and show this one.
It's not neat, but I don't have a tripod and stuff to actually make a production. Okay. Maybe you could mute also. I just finished the configuration website just now. A friend of mine was helping me out, so we just finished it right now. So I will also show it after this.
Yeah. This looks good.
The animation's a nice touch.
Yeah, that's Elvin Hill doing the magic. So this is the screen where I could see the enrolled keys, and then pressing the select button will cycle through the enrolled keys. And,
okay.
And this is just the time for debugging. It will go away later. This is sync time. So if I press this, it will connect to the enrolled Wi-Fi, and then it will try to sync the time. This is the settings page. If I press this, then the website, the config server will start. I mean, it starts access point, and then I need to connect to it. After I connect to it, just a minute.
So you're basically provisioning the device, right?
Yeah, right.
So Espressive already has some software components available for provisioning a device. Have you looked at those?
Yes, but they didn't match my use case. I wanted to set up a site. So now I would scan this and connect it to this IP, and then a website will load from ESP.
Okay.
Actually, the provisioning needs to be done through app, I think, or only through Bluetooth. So it was not actually matching my use case.
No, so you can do it through Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. And what you can do is you can have a Python script do that for you as well. But I like the fact that you have done pretty decent stuff with the components. So this is not Arduino, this is ESP IDF components, right?
Yeah.
And that sample app. Yeah. But I think that makes a lot more sense because makes for much more efficient code.
So where exactly do you store these keys inside your inside
I have
the.
made a space partition. I have made a space partition to store these keys, but I need to move to FATFS because Swift does not support encryption. So I'll do that once everything is finalized.
Right.
So O is storage where everything is my data is stored. Website and the Wi-Fi IP address and the keys. Sorry, not the IP address, Wi-Fi SSIDs. So the Wi-Fi, I also wrote a Wi-Fi handler. What it does is I am giving it a JSON array of available Wi-Fi SSID names and passwords. So it will try to connect to each Wi-Fi 2 times, and if one fails, then it will go to the next one. It will continue doing so. Like in number of entries are there inside these inside the
So
Wi-Fi.json.
this is to make it more portable as a device.
Yeah, portable and redundancy. Like if you if you have 2 to 3 Wi-Fi's, like you take it to office, you take it at home. So it's better to have 2 Wi-Fi's enrolled rather than changing it each time.
Got it. Okay.
That's handy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
So
silly question, but I mean, there is enough space to store the reasonably required number of websites that need keys, right? I mean, at least, I mean, I have about
yeah.
15 or 20 of them on my Google Authenticator right now, for example.
Yeah. 15 is it takes only 64 byte per key. So yeah,
Okay,
there's a lot of space.
sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the flash and SRAM sizes on some ESP32 models are insane nowadays. It's like
Yeah.
16 MB and whatnot. I think it goes up to probably
Six,
128 or something. So if that's an
Okay.
issue, you can always desolder and update to a newer room or a
yeah.
higher capacity room. But
Yeah.
yeah, like
Okay.
Yeah.
the available options are pretty good.
So I would want to share the website screen now. The website I
Uh,
made.
just a minute. You know, you can share as well. I can do it for now. But
No, I mean the configuration site that I made. I need to share from
okay,
my side.
okay. Have you? You haven't shared it with StreamYard yet, I think.
Is it visible now?
Yeah.
Okay. So right now I'm connected to my this 192.168.4.1. So this will display the currently enrolled Wi-Fi SSIDs. I could just add something and it will come here. So these are the two Wi-Fi to which it will try to connect. I could just delete one. It will get deleted from the flash. Same goes for keys. Uh, Now I could use a TOTP generator. So let's take this example key. I'll add just so this will get added now. Uh, yes. Can I also share from my mobile? I might be able to share the screen of this display.
You can't share at the same time. You can share only one screen at a time.
No, I will join from my mobile. Is it possible?
Uh, yeah, that's possible, but that'll take a little while.
Okay, just a minute.
So I don't think they are stored in the EEPROM. I think there's a flash partition, Amit. So with the ESP32 ESP IDF, what you can do is you can have separate partitions, and in those partitions you can say, okay, this is the application part, this is the non-volatile storage, and you can then have your own partitions as well. So what's happening is I think he's done a partition for storing all of that.
I have joined from my phone.
Okay.
Uh, Am I visible?
Yeah, just a second. Yeah.
So if you can see here, it is same, I guess, or is it not? Okay, I need to sync the time. Yes.
How do I make solo layer? Okay. Okay. So sync time is purely over RTC, so there is no Wi-Fi sync time.
No, it syncs time over NTP and then it updates to Wi-Fi, to RTC.
Okay.
Now I
And
need to
how
start.
long? So how long does it store that? So like, what's the battery life if there's no?
The RTC is, I think, 2 to 3 years
Okay.
because I'm using a CR2032.
Okay.
Okay, so can we
That lasts pretty
refresh?
long. I think I've had a 3231 running on a single 3032 for about 6 years or 7 years now. Hasn't
Yeah,
lost more than a second or two, I think.
just giving a rough estimate, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so if you can see, it's 56350. It matches the site.
563508. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Nice. Can you show it one more time?
Yeah,
Now it should be 516107.
yeah, it lags a bit, 2 to 3
Yeah,
seconds.
516107. Nice. Yeah, so that's a TOTP demo for everyone.
Yeah.
So
But
I
yeah,
mean,
the cryptographic parts are also pretty interesting, but let's not get dragged into that right now.
okay.
Yeah, I used a lot of the ESP's thing only. And I mean, they support full SSL and one more library, so it was not that tough because IDF provides us the function.
Right. Yeah. IF makes it a lot easy to even add such things.
Yeah.
Yes. So with respect to storing keys in your flash, there are sometimes separate chips used just to store your keys securely
Hmm.
in devices. So one of them is I've just put one out, a small data sheet out there. Anuj, if you want to
Uh-huh.
put that out on the
Yeah.
YouTube chat as well, so that if somebody wants to look
Actually,
at that, yeah.
ESP makes a module with these of ESP WROM 32DSC, but I don't know. They advertise it on its site, but they don't sell anywhere.
Yeah, so the thing with that particular module is that it usually works with cloud keys. So for example, you'd put your AWS IoT keys inside of those. So
Uh-huh.
if you want to buy them, you basically get in touch with SPSF and say, I want 100 pre-provisioned such modules
Okay.
because they come with like things pre-provisioned. So
Okay.
you can try and do that, or or you could just
Right.
connect these
Encrypt the
over to your
flash.
yeah.
Yeah, or you can
Actually,
use a chip.
I
Actually, if
had
you take a
taken
look at the
a look
newer
at this.
SPSF chips, these kind of functionalities are inbuilt.
Uh-huh.
So the old ESP32, the dual core 240 megahertz, all of those things,
Uh-huh.
those were pretty lacking when it comes to some of the security features. But the newer ESP32 chips have these things kind of inbuilt, so you might not even have to add them separately.
The E variant, 32E.
Yeah, yeah,
Again, no one sells them.
yeah. That's the problem. Those are announced but not widely available yet. But I think
Yeah.
they'll be eventually. Okay. Akshay and Anul, do you have any more notes on the?
No, not really. I mean, it's as it is. It's pretty well rounded. Just a few polishing touches to be given, and I think it's good to go. What's the
Yeah.
license you're using for this, Vedan?
MIT.
Okay. try and see if you can consider separate licensing for software and hardware, like use CERN for the hardware
Uh-huh.
part and something else for the software. Actually, I
Okay.
think so. The way things are coming around now is I have realized that we need three different licensing options for our projects: one for hardware, one for software, one for documentation.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
and each may need its own particular version. Like
Which do
so,
you recommend for a
documentation could
hardware
be
project?
The
so for
Sun one
hardware
is
there's
pretty.
CERN Open Hardware License.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
pretty solid.
Okay.
And then for software, I don't know, whatever MIT or something. I think
MIT is usually preferred if you want to
yeah,
allow people to do
yeah,
interesting things with it. If you want people
Mm-hmm.
to contribute back mandatorily, people usually go for GPL.
right.
GPL
MIT
And I
seems
think
good.
documentation would be under Creative Commons or something like that. So
right.
Okay.
I think, yeah, because yeah, I mean the last couple of projects I've realized one license doesn't cover the whole gamut of things that we are doing. It's no longer just software or just hardware. It's like a combination of many things now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, think about the licensing as well right now. That's important. But otherwise, yeah, pretty well
Yeah.
rounded project. Very few things that
Yeah.
I would change, which I already mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
Regarding
particularly
the
like the
PCBs.
flat cable one because
Uh-huh.
I've had that instances with my Raspberry Pi or something where the piece the cable comes out and then it gets yanked and all of those things happen
Uh-huh.
Right.
with display
Okay.
Yeah.
cables.
So maybe a cutout thing will work, or
Yeah. Which
something else
Yeah.
sits on
also,
it.
yeah, which reminds me, if it is not too expensive, actually putting a FFPC connector would be a good way because then you can replace the OLEDs if something goes wrong or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I could
And
add
uh,
30
I
pin
don't
one.
think they would be too expensive, and also you don't have to worry about soldering that flat cable anymore.
Yeah. Soldering
Right.
it is, yeah, it a bit of work.
I know it's quite a pain, and it's more of a good technique that's needed in that. Otherwise, you might just mess up your cable as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
I think a
Yeah.
connector would be a good idea. Just be
So
careful with just be careful with the connector footprints. The first time I did my Trezor wallet, I had the footprint flipped over because the drawing was showing the wrong view side. So things kind of got messed up over there. And I had to mirror it
Mm-hmm.
again to make sure it worked. So yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
so we have a couple of questions in the comments as well. So Amit asked, so this is OAuth TOTP, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure
OAuth.
if yeah,
TOTP.
OAuth TOTP. Okay.
yeah.
And the next thing that he adds is that do you plan to support FIDO 2? So similar to how the popular YubiKey key
I'm not
works.
sure Fido 2 is USB based, right? You need to plug in the key to load the.
Yes, that is true. But the thing is
Uh,
now you're in the ESP32 world where USB supports there as well. So the newer
uh-huh.
ESP32 chips,
S2.
two, yeah, S2, for example. So that that is now potentially an option without having to add a serial to USB chip.
Yeah.
So without increasing your bill of materials, you
Mm-hmm.
could potentially do it. So I think this is probably a future plan question
Yeah,
from
that
Amit.
could be a fork, I
Yeah,
think, because
yeah.
the GUI library doesn't yet support ESP32S2, and that's I
Which
mean the
library?
GUI library. I am using LVGL.
Okay.
If you have heard of it, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a
So that's
very
for the
nice
OLED,
library.
right?
Yeah. Mm,
For the OLED. Yeah. Okay. Hmm. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. I haven't taken a look at the graphics library, so I'm not sure why it wouldn't support. Maybe it's just an availability thing. Maybe the developers haven't had an S2
mm.
delivered yet.
They need to port it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, as long as it works with the SPIDF, it should be good enough for the LVGL stuff.
So, what are your next thoughts on taking this project? How do you want to drive it further?
So as of now, I'm just going to sell. I had 10 to 12 PCBs. So I'm going to assemble it and sell it on TND for now, because the
Right.
chips are too costly to go for a large, for, to go for large manufacturing.
Right.
So I'll wait out for 6 months, 7 months, and maybe also make a new design in this time. I could actually go for 4-layer boards and a Pico D4 and actually reduce the size to half. It is doable, I guess.
Right.
That
Also,
makes sense.
I look even for RTCs. I have looked up RTC from a company called Microcrystal. I'll
Okay.
share it. Just a minute. Just a minute.
Yeah, I think right now your DS 3231 could be the most expensive part of your device, I guess.
Yeah. I'm using knockoffs or whatever they are from Robo, so it cost 120, 130 or 200 something. But the original
Well,
part is $8 right now.
I know.
Wow.
I mean, I wouldn't trust those, so be careful on that.
Yeah.
Actually, it's something like I read on forums that they had given some 1 million order and then there was 500k surplus, and that's what is being sold everywhere in because the
Yeah,
part number points back to 2011.
I think that's just a cloud cover. Not
Yeah.
Uh,
Doesn't sound very legit.
can't can't be true. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's just a cover story.
So
uh-huh.
Mayank's in the chat and he has another suggestion. So might have to be careful about mating cycles and bending radius when using connector plus FFC. So
Yeah, I mean, usually you want to connect it once or twice and forget about it, but the
yeah,
ability to do that is worth paying for the little extra for the connector. I think.
right. Yeah, coming back to this, I think if you can have a debug, developer and a release version of your firmware, that might help. Because like you said, there are
Okay.
things that you show on your OLED right now which you
Uh-huh.
don't want to show going forward. So I think it's just
Yeah.
better to have a production firmware and then a developer firmware, because then those are two distinct phases that I like. I personally, when I'm
Uh-huh.
using something, I don't want the developer version all the time. But if I'm
Yeah.
working on
Yeah.
something, then I want to work with the developer firmware.
Mm-hmm.
So debug and a release tagged firmware would help. And then I think this is pretty easy to do in ESP IDF, because then you have the ESP log functionality.
Yeah.
So
Could
similarly,
strip
that
it
you
off.
can, yeah, you could just strip it out. That works out pretty well.
I also think of selling it as something hacker version and a commercial version. So hacker version would be encrypted and the commercial one will be, because the
Right,
encryption is quirky. I guess you need that specific key to flash it again. Will be
right.
a
So
so I posted that link of RTC.
yeah, I'll post it in the chat. So one thing that you can also take a look at, I'm trying to remember this, but some of the STM32 chips have this. I'm trying to remember if the especially ones have. It's called a tamper detection feature. And what it does is it basically notifies you, even in low power state, because it's part of the RTC block, about a break in a circuit. So if you're going to do those kind of things, then it might make sense to implement that either in software on the ESP32 or see if that's there in the hardware, uh,
Okay.
so that your case and your PCB act as one. So if someone
Yeah.
opens your case, your software knows, and then it can act accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Maybe
just search
it
for
is
tamper
because
detection. You might actually find something.
I think I
okay.
remember this from my earlier Trezor wallet experience. I think the original Trezor didn't have that or something. It's like too far out for me to remember exactly. But
Right?
the clone that I designed for the client had that feature
Right.
implemented.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a pretty, yeah. Tamper detection is a pretty handy feature,
yeah,
especially if you're thinking about, a security device, and if you're also doing the case work, because that always comes along with the case. You can't have a tamper detection thing solely on a PCB project, but since
yeah,
Vedant's already working on that, it
yeah,
might
yeah.
make sense to look into that.
Yeah.
So the
The
next,
I
STM32
I
tamper detection stuff is pretty good, I'd say. I haven't seen anyone do that with ESP32.
there was thread on Twitter. Some guy had made a very cheap tamper detection using some PCB technique or something. I need to
Yeah,
look it up.
yeah.
so what's your thought on the battery part? How long do you think you can run this on battery?
I tested it runs about 6 hours, some 7 hours without Wi-Fi. Maybe less, 4 hours without Wi-Fi. With Wi-Fi, it drains quickly.
So then, okay.
But
So
since
it's not.
RTC is being powered, I could just switch it off and turn it on anytime I want. Because RTC is powered by a separate battery.
Yes, I mean the RTC state.
So
That's
instead
fair.
of using the flat pack lipos, have you thought of using the 18650, the one of the smaller versions of the ones, so at least you can, have a change of batteries when needed, something like that?
More like the removable one, 3 volt batteries, double A.
Yeah. Yeah, you get them
No,
in
I
double A
haven't given it
sizes.
a thought.
The lipo cells, you
That
get them
would
in double A as
mhm.
well.
That would make the device pretty bulky. Right now, I'm using 402030 lipo 3.7 volt.
Okay. You can
How
get them
many
in
amp is this?
triple A as well. Triple A will be smaller. I
Mhm.
forget the nomenclature for that. I don't know, but whatever it is, it should be.
The battery is 350 and 300. I mean, there isn't any standard. I get from electronicscomp.com.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yes,
they
I
are
mean, I look at the 6 hours continuous. I have slight reservations on that number. I believe with 350 milliamp, you might just be doing 1.5 to 2 hours max out, because your ESP might be
uh-huh.
drawing somewhere around 100 to 200 milliamps in when Wi-Fi turned on. So you're gonna have 1.5 hours,
Uh-huh.
2 hours max. That also with it'll drop out at some point because your voltage drops below
Yeah.
the cutoff voltage. So you're not gonna
Yeah,
get till
yeah,
1.8. You might just cut off at 2.5 itself if the LiPo has its own
yeah, yeah.
battery management circuit inside there.
I get till 2.7 or 2.9 something.
Exactly.
But I guess
So
the 6 hour is wrong. I need to test it again. I had done it pretty long back. But if since I've given a slide switch, if I turn it off, then it turn it off when I'm not using it. Goes on for months and months. I don't need to charge it.
Right. But yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about Lipo at all, it might make sense to do some of these things yourself and put those numbers in the documentation so
Yeah,
that other
yeah,
people might uh, yeah, plan accordingly.
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and if you
You don't want it dying on you when you need it most, right? So
Yeah,
that's kind of
hmm
important.
Also added a load switch, so that also that will also save power if I write so in the firmware deep configuring deep sleep. I need to figure that out yet.
right. Again, like the newer USB32 chips might be a better bet if we are
Yeah.
getting into low power territory.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, availability might be somewhat of an issue.
S3 seems good in all
SE is
aspects.
good, but it's pretty new. Like it's
It
weeks
will
old. It's yeah.
3 to 4 years to actually make it stable.
I think it might be faster because the software support is the same. So it works on
Mhm.
top of ESP IDF, and ESP IDF is very actively developed. So everything
Yeah.
that works in ESP IDF should work there. So that
Okay.
might be good. But yeah, in terms of being available in a lot of shops and everything, it might take some months, I think.
Yeah. Even S2 is a bit troubling in terms of using ESP IDF and S2 because the USB OTG is still not implemented on their side.
Okay. Hmm. Have you taken a look at Tiny USB? So Tiny USB is uh, the main project that's behind that, I believe.
Tiny Pico, I think. If
No, Tiny USB is
USB.
let me see.
Tiny USB. Take a look at
Oh, I didn't
this.
know.
Yeah, take a look at this. And I think these guys are working on ESP32 supported MCP. So if you look at this, you will
Uh-huh.
see ESP32S, ESP32S2 and S3. So these guys are pretty awesome. The Tiny USB developers. They're pretty
Hmm.
active on Twitter. That's how I know about these guys. But yeah, if
Okay.
you take a look at these particular repo, you might actually find some stuff that you're looking for.
Uh-huh.
And if you're looking for ESP32S2, I think Campus Components has them in stock as modules
Yeah, it
in
does
India.
from where I ordered.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you might be able to use Campus Components and tiny
I had
USB to.
I wanted the E version. I called them up, but they said that we won't order because there's no order for SE for the 32E, the newer variant.
Right. Hmm.
Also,
Yeah.
the S2 FH4, the one with integrated flash, and that's going to be
Right.
interesting.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of variants now when it comes to SSD.
The links we have on chat here, are they showing up on YouTube as well?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so they'll be available later as well.
Yeah.
And I've posted them from the Makerville account, so they'll show up as links and not text.
All
That's
right,
all.
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, everything is in the chat.
Yeah.
Cool. Unless
So,
anyone has any more questions or doubts or suggestions, I think this was a nice stream. We covered quite a lot of ground. Uh,
Yeah.
I hope this was.
I had a question from my side. Right now,
Sure, sure,
I'm
sure.
using a RxTX port and a FT separate FT32 module, FT2232 module to flash it. Should I
Right.
add a UART to USB chip in the future? I mean, my thought point was it becomes difficult to hack into the chip if I'm not providing a USB chip, converter chip.
Um,
There are two
Maybe
ways to
that.
look at it. One is if you're going to follow a standard connector available for the which is readily available with people, then follow the standard connector. Don't come with a new convention, and don't make people have cross wires. Just make it as easy as possible to connect. But if you're asking
Okay.
somebody to program this on a regular basis, then maybe you want to bring in the programming on board, but then that
Uh-huh.
also disables the security aspect of it. Somebody can reprogram it and use it for other purposes too.
But then I could also pick up the module, the separate module, which is $200, and then do it. I mean, that was a bit of dilemma. Like, if anyone wants to hack, then
so
he will hack. Anyways,
anyway, since you're planning to have commercial and hacker versions, it would be nice to not have it because any
okay.
hacker versus fault will have a way to,
yeah.
do this. So I think it's not a deal breaker.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
you could also have a way to wirelessly write the firmware, right? Since you're
Yeah.
already connecting your Wi-Fi. Uh, so in the hacker version, you could make that available easily.
Hmm.
So you can then in the
Yeah.
web server, you can drag and drop your firmware, and I'm sure you will find examples of this, and just update it.
Yeah.
So I know a couple of products based on. So take a look at Pocket Sprite, which is a product
Hmm.
which is based on ESP32. It's open source as well. They do that
Okay.
way of updating the firmware. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, that's also doable if you don't want to do the hardware route.
Yeah. Totally. I just need to check if it works with encryption. The OTP thing works with encrypted flash.
Yeah, as long as you're making the signed firmware available somewhere
Uh-huh.
that has already been flashed,
Yeah.
that would make sense. And like Mayank has an interesting point as well. Like OTF firmware update might be essential for the commercial versions, in which case you'll have to have some
Hmm.
service like AWS IoT, or even you can use S3 to have a place where people check for new
Yeah.
versions and then update them. And then you'll obviously have to use signed updates there.
That case, maybe I need to go to the 8MB version. I'm not sure if OTA, the custom partition where keys are stored, and the website is, and the
Yeah,
normal.
it depends on how much you're using right now. But yeah, going with 8MB makes sense, especially if you have a website.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and yeah, this makes sense. Like, especially with IoT devices and security devices, you should always have some secure way of updating, uh, so that you can patch
Hmm.
vulnerabilities. Because
That's a good
it's
point.
also that you are dependent on a separate standard. So let's say TOTP has an update which fixes
Hmm.
something. You want
Yeah.
to make sure that people get that update.
True.
Okay.
All right.
That's,
Because we
yeah.
want to mark.
Yeah, this was a nice stream. I think I always think that we are going to get done in 30 minutes, and we never do. So I'm going to just
No
start
way.
scheduling for yeah, it's just start scheduling for 1 hour.
Engineers don't work on a schedule.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Yeah, but that's like a general rule of thumb, right? Whenever you're estimating the time required for a project, estimate it and then double it. So I
Yeah.
think that's what I should do.
Plus, add some buffer too.
Probably. But yeah, I like this project. I think it's got a lot of
Yeah.
feedback.
Good job.
And good job
Nice
with the
job,
whole
Bill.
documentation.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Cool. Have a nice
Awesome.
guys, everyone. Have a nice day, everyone. Sorry.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
It's been awesome.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, guys,
See you
for
guys.
doing it. Bye.